New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
This is What's Up and Why, bringing you the bright side of life, one fun moment at a time. Brought to you by the New Thought Media Network. Please put your hands together for your hosts, Rev Casey Taylor and Miss B Lovely.
Hey, Reverend Christine. I'm going to put our names up on the screen. Reverend Christine Monks, thank you so much for joining me today for this episode of What's Up and Why. My name is Reverend Casey Taylor. I use they, them pronouns. And my cousin, B Lovely, is started her vacation early. I don't think I told you this, Rev Christine. I'm gonna ask you to introduce yourself, but I want to let you know that my family generally goes on a big family trip each year, oftentimes in North Carolina. And tomorrow, like literally my flight is at 6:30 in the morning tomorrow. And she's already on the East Coast. So she's gotten it started. She drove down to North Carolina to hang out with the babies and get ready to go. So she's kicked her vacation off one day early. I'm leaving tomorrow. And that gave us the opportunity for us to do a queerly beloved takeover. So Reverend Christine, I'm so grateful that you are joining, that you have agreed to do this takeover episode with you. And this is the time where I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself and say whatever it is you'd like to say to the people.
Well, thank you, Reverend Casey. I am Reverend Christine Renee Monks. My pronouns are she and her, but you can just call me Christine. And I will do my best to be lovely as a replacement for your co-host today. But I am excited to talk to you about the Queerly Beloved Retreat, which is something we both are very attached to and working on very, very diligently.
For sure. I love that you're picking up on that Be Lovely energy. We were talking about before we went live of Christine, she said I can call her Christine. So I'm gonna call her Christine. Was like, how's my hair? And I'm like, I can't help you with that. This is not my area of expertise. This is me with my dirty dishes in the sink. Like, I can't help you with that. But I love it. Like I gotta have a Be Lovely co-host. So I'm so
grateful. I put my grand piano in the background. Yes. I cleared off my sofa, and I have a lot of lovely can lights in the ceiling. So I'm just here, just hanging,
Yes. I especially love, like, one of the other things we talked about before we started this episode was how the diversity of our experiences coming together to develop the Queerly Beloved Retreat, I think is really key. That what I like about spiritual retreats and what you like about spiritual retreats is different. And so the diversity of the team and then the way the team has come together, I think is really beautiful. I'll let y'all know, those of you who are watching, like, fun fact, the way that Christine and we knew of each other for a while before we actually met in person. And we were on each other's wish lists of, like, we wanted to connect, and, like, we're really sitting in this place of trusting spirit to bring us together when the time is right. But I think it's fair to say that we were mutual fans before we actually connected. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the way we ended up connecting was just divinity unfolding. So I hope you'll continue that fun story.
For sure. I am happy to. So we were in Banff, Canada. We were there for a Centers for Spiritual Living retreat. And I was the absolute last person to get on the shuttle bus. I scheduled the shuttle bus way too close to when my plane was supposed to land. And I'm like, it'll be fine. And so that's how I ended up the last one. And the last seat that was available on this bus was right next to Reverend Christine. So we got an opportunity to sit next to each other for hours with the backdrop of Banff, Canada, as our landscape. vibing and getting to know each other. And I mentioned that my friend Lou and I were organizing this retreat. And just for like a little backstory, I just happened to be drinking this cup of lemonade from a Roscoe's cup, which is a gay club in Chicago, where Lou was with me when I got these cups. Like, Lou and I have been friends since we were in college, and we're prayer partners. And Lou had this idea. What really it started with a moment, because we're prayer partners. Lou, we had scheduled prayer, and Lou was feeling down about how one of her clients had just committed suicide. And whenever you're in prayer with somebody who's like, oh, this is, of course, Lou was feeling down. And so as I continued to support them in prayer and connection, they heard this call on their heart to organize a spiritual retreat in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in honor of this youth who unalived himself, and the trans youth specifically who unalived himself. And Lou felt really strongly about bringing this retreat to life. And it was just a conversation that we'd had over prayer, and we prayed about it. And I was like, I can help. And Lou and I were on the Next Gen retreat planning team together in maybe 2023. And Lou and I were co-president. Well, we didn't start out as co-presidents, like at the LGBT Resource Center in college, LGBT or community organization in college. Fun fact, I helped found the LGBT Resource Center at our college while I was there. And Lou was like a freshman. I was a senior. And, it was kind of like, we vibed, we were friends, and I was graduating. So like, I needed to look to who are the new leaders, who can I like support coming up in this organization that are like going to help keep it alive. So I would just kind of take Lou with me to like hang up flyers around campus. And so we've been organizing LGBT events together since we were college students, 22 and 18. And now we are 45, and whatever that math is for how old Lou is right now. They just turned 40 something the other day. So this retreat came together in such a magical way. And Reverend Christine, your divine yes came in such a magical way. Do you want to talk about what led to that moment of your inspiration to explore us further, and how it's felt being on the retreat planning team, really not knowing any of us, and meeting me on the bus?
Yeah, it was kind of a sacred yes. So we sat on that bus together, and I don't remember whether you asked me at that point or whether you mentioned it to me, but I am a transgender woman. I am one of the few transgender women in the Centers for Spiritual Living organization. And it's tough to be a transgender person right now. It's tough to be queer. It's tough to be transgender specifically in this environment. And at some point you shared your heart with me about doing this Queerly Beloved retreat and asked me if I would consider being on the board or the planning team or whatever for it. And it was a hell yes for me. So one of my rules in life is if something isn't a hell yes, it's probably a hell no. But this felt like it was important, and it felt like it was at least worth checking out. And I did. And I bring some different skills to it, I think. Just given the things you were talking about, my experience of you is you're much more spontaneous than I am. I tend to plan everything out to the nth degree. I sometimes plan out my spontaneity in advance, just so I know when I'm going to be spontaneous. But anyway, we had a good time doing that, and I've been involved in the retreat since fairly early on in its thing. So, and when is it, Reverend KC? Do you want to tell people when this hot retreat is going to be?
I sure can, because it's coming up super soon. It is Labor Day weekend of Ann Arbor. Labor Day falls a little bit later in September. I don't even have the exact date handy. I don't know. I just know it's like Friday to Monday. This is how we know the difference between Reverend Christine being the planner and me not. And as we spoke to, this is the value of having diversity on the team. I can't have a whole retreat team full of people who flow in spontaneity. We got to have somebody who like puts the budget together. Props, bow to you, Rev Christine, for putting the budget together and helping us figure out how much we have to charge in ticket prices, where we at least break even, and what do we got to do for this and that. So I'm so grateful that you are bringing your class, your baby grand piano, your wisdom, and your planning talents and skills to this project.
I am. And so we'll just get really clear for everybody. The retreat starts on September 3rd, Thursday evening, and it goes till Sunday morning. So it's the 3rd of September through the 6th of September this year. And so folks would fly into Detroit is where they would, and then they would drive about an hour or so up to where our retreat center is. So I'm excited about that.
Yes. And I'm realizing that we haven't chatted about the fact that registration is still open, that there are tickets available, that if you are watching this for the first time and just now learning about the Queerly Beloved Retreat, we put this website right up on the screen there, queerlybelovedretreat.org, which is where you can get your tickets and join us for this retreat in Ann Arbor, Camp Tamarack in Ann Arbor. And I think, something that, as we're talking about like different styles and diversity and team, something that's come up pretty consistently as part of our discussions is the location, Camp Tamarack, being a Jewish facility. And one thing that we've all been really clear about, and I think that's really, really beautiful, is that as there's a lot of heat in this country, cultural conversations about the conflict in the Middle East, conflict in the Middle East, been talking about for centuries, like what's new, and recognizing that as we have identified this as a sacred place, and several people on the team are of Jewish descent, we've been having some very, I think, just very sacred conversations about what it means for us to host this event at a Jewish retreat center. You have any thoughts or anything you'd like to share about that process or participating in the experience?
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that into the conversation. This is a spiritual retreat. It's not a religious retreat. So the fact that we're using it on at a Jewish campsite has nothing to do with what we're going to be talking about or experiencing while we're there. And so people who have spiritual calling, just the way that you and I are both ministers in the Centers for Spiritual Living, based on religious science, but it's a spiritual practice. It's more spirituality than it is the dogma of religions. And and expanding a little bit on that, there are a lot of people in our communities, the queer community, gay, lesbian, trans, however identifying, that have been really harmed by religions over time. They've been shamed, they've been shunned, they've had conversion therapy, they've had all sorts of things. And we celebrate different expressions of the divine in and as each one of us within our belief system and within our organization. And that theme is definitely going to be present in the Queerly Beloved Retreat, as well as some pretty rockin' music. We've got Melissa and Z as our musicians, and I'm super excited. They're on our planning team. All the people planning are queer folks, trans folks, and this is a trans and queer retreat by and for trans and queer people to create a safe space. So I think that definitely wants to be brought into the room too.
Absolutely. I appreciate the fact that you clarified what it means for us to be a spiritual retreat. Thank you for doing that. And also for pointing out how incredible musicians are, that Melissa and Z are. As we spoke to the organic, sacred, divine connection of how Spirit brought you to this team, Melissa and Z ended up on this team in a very spiritual, similar way. Just like you and I met at Banff, Melissa and Z and I met at Asilomar the year before. And I don't remember how I got their contact information. I really don't even know what it was. But when Lou had the idea of a retreat, first step is let's put together a team. And it started with just having conversations, texting people. Hey, this is an idea we're thinking about. How does this feel for you? Melissa, Z, and I had only met at this conference. No other context. I'd never seen them perform live anywhere before then. They weren't performing at that retreat or that conference where we were in attendance. And so I'd been on some Zoom meetings where they had like some virtual performances, and their virtual videos are incredible. So if you're curious about, I should have had a banner for Melissa and Z if I was thinking that, but if you're curious about, oh my God, life, this Queerly Beloved retreat is going to redirect you to Oh My God Life. And Oh My God Life is where you can find a bunch of videos. Melissa and Z, look them up on YouTube, where you can see, like, you just get a sense of who they are as musicians and identify whether that vibes and that resonates with you. But like, so I just texted, I think Z is whose number I had, or maybe I emailed them, because like, yeah, I didn't have their number. Like, we're all in the Centers for Spiritual Living. We have each other's email addresses. We're all in this. We have a listserv where we can communicate together as a collective. And Z's on that. So I emailed her and said, hey, do you want to talk about this? And she was like, sure. And then that was that. Melissa and Z, I felt like having organized retreats, having served on the Next Gen retreat with Lou before, I saw a lot of value in the musicians being involved in the planning, instead of just like plopping a musician in an event and being like, okay, go, having them have a voice in every step of the process creates that sense of like ownership, but also understanding when they get there. Like, nobody's like looking to me to answer your questions, because like, you've been here, you saw it, you had all this time to get your questions answered and get whatever it is that you need for this to be a successful event. So I love their sacred yes, how easy that was, and in the ways in which they've contributed to this for serving as our hosts. Like, as I mentioned, the website goes to their Oh My God Life page, and for them to have set up the registration for us, for them to serve as the fiscal sponsor, for us to be able to offer this retreat to the community, for this to be our very first year, and for them to have faith, for all of us to have faith and come together to put this retreat on. So I got to ask you, other than Melissa and Z, other than the music, Christine, what are you most excited about at this Queerly Beloved retreat we've got coming on over Labor Day weekend at Camp Tamarack in Orton, Michigan? Is it Ortonville, Michigan?
Yeah, I think it's Ortonville is right.
Ortonville, Michigan. At least I got that part right.
Yeah. I'm excited to get together with other people in a safe environment. I'm excited to go out and canoe on a pond. I'm excited to come in and listen to some good music. I'm excited to just be with people who understand what my experience in this world is like. And I'm excited to hold a space for people for their experience too. So sometimes that whole idea of having an affinity group, there are things that people can understand better if they've walked the same path you've walked. And it's not to say we're not welcoming to people who have different experiences, because clearly we are, but sometimes it just feels comfortable, like you and your family getting together. There's a lot of shared experiences with your cousins and your family and things like that. So you can use that shortcut because everybody knows what you're talking about with very few words.
That was so beautifully said. I'm so glad I asked you that question. I want to show some love, give a shout out for Mara Sousa and Becca Jane, who are watching us right now. I'm grateful to have you watching the show and giving us your love, wrapped in with your hearts. And I'm grateful that, as you know, as you talked about this experience of affinity groups, you also mentioned earlier that being openly trans in 2026 is not an easy thing to do. I identify as cisgender. I use they, them pronouns. I do not identify as non-binary, which a lot of people don't know. A lot of people assume because I use they, them pronouns that I identify as non-binary. And for me, I identify as gender nonconforming. So I personally spent a lot of time in the question as to whether they them pronouns felt right for me, especially because I knew that utilizing these pronouns would come with all kinds of assumptions about my identity, including in the affinity groups that we're speaking to. Queer people who know me very, very well. Lou, for a long time, believed that I was non-binary, just because it's kind of like what our brains do, right? Like, we put each other in boxes, and they them usually means non-binary. And I feel really comfortable identifying as a cisgender non-conforming person. So I had to really sit in this these questions for a really long time about whether they them pronouns felt right for me. And for me, what the environment that made me feel affirmed enough to embrace these pronouns was the homeless shelter where I serve at Sisu Youth Services, where this space is so affirming that at the time, they don't do this now, which is interesting. But we have a lot of turnover now, and we had a lot less in the early days, where a list of the clients and a list of the staff were just on a wall with the pronouns. So if you ever like wondered what someone's pronouns were, we have name tags now. We didn't have those then. I'm realizing that's what it is. So my pronouns are on my name tags, and the clients just rotate. There's way more clients now. But there was a list of clients with their pronouns, a list of staff members with their pronouns, and they were constantly changing. The client's pronouns were constantly changing. The staff pronouns were changing. And it was this environment where, like, if you want to know what somebody's pronouns are this week, you check the list. And there was no like, oh, we got to print out another list because you changed your pronouns for the 17th time, especially because like we're working in the youth shelter. There are youth that change their pronouns 17 times in, I don't know, any given moment. And there was no, there was no like, oh, we don't have enough paper, or, like there was nobody who's like, no, we're not going to change this list because you're not, we were constantly updating the lists. And so that's where it started, my feeling of affirmation, right? And then the second part was when I served as a case manager there for a year. And on that case management team, I was the only person who identified as cisgender. Everybody on the team was either trans or non-binary. And I've never had that experience where I'm the only cis person on a team at work. And every single one of them used they, them pronouns, all of them, but me at that time. And when we were in meetings with the community, trainings, things like that, and we're mental health not mental health professionals, like technically we're social services provider, and we're in all of these environments with mental health professionals, and my coworkers were getting misgendered all day and night. Pronouns were not being used correctly by the providers who are intended, like they're teaching us mental health training. We're in a mental health training. Y'all are telling us to use people's pronouns correctly, and you can't do it while you're teaching us this right now. That kind of thing was happening in Oklahoma. It's Oklahoma City. And so
I think it's broader than Oklahoma City.
Yes. So like they them pronouns didn't feel as important for me to use in LA, but in Oklahoma it felt significant. And initially, like as I'm in these rooms and these trainings, and I'm constantly advocating for my coworkers and their use of their pronouns, I realized that I now live a life where I no longer have to defend or explain my identity. And as a mixed race, half Jewish, queer, gender non-conforming queer person, let me tell you, I'm tired of having conversations about my identity. And that was just another one I didn't want to have. And so I realized that I could just use they, them pronouns. I don't got to come at anybody for misgendering me, because I appreciate the fact that the longer I've used they, them pronouns, the harder it's been for me to be misgendered. But I, at the same time, because I identify as cisgender, like it doesn't feel as significant as somebody that does not feel, that's non-binary. And I get that. And so to me, I kind of feel like I'm experiencing this like gender non-conforming privilege in the way that I use they, them pronouns, where I don't need to police anyone for it, but that my not policing anyone for it puts the responsibility on that person, whether you're going to use my pronouns correctly or whether you don't. I'm not going to be the one who teaches you that. I will teach some things, but and if we're in a classroom and I'm teaching something about pronouns, if we're at a queerly beloved retreat, like we could have a conversation about my pronouns. But I feel more comfortable in that kind of context than like dinner or whatever, you know what I mean? So I'm grateful that I got to share my pronoun coming out story.
Wow. That was a lot.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, I don't know whether everyone knows the term cisgender versus transgender. Cisgender refers to the fact that you identify what's between your ears is the same as what's between your legs is one thing. I was assigned male at birth, but felt like I was a girl since I was 3 years old. So that for me was a big deal. Cisgender just means that who you see yourself as and how you anatomically presented to the doctor at your birth or your mother or whomever was there is aligned with itself. And pronouns are a big thing, especially for transgender folks, because most of us don't completely look like our gender that we identify with, especially when we first transition. So being misgendered means using the wrong pronouns for someone. And so it is a big deal. And I appreciate your acknowledging that privilege that you have too with that, because a lot of times it's really hard. So I think my recommendation is always ask someone's pronouns or offer yours. That makes it very safe. If I introduce myself and offer mine, then you're not wondering, because you can't tell by looking at someone. And it's just kind of a cop-out to say, I don't need to ask your pronouns. I can look at you and tell what they are, but you can't, because in your case, you identify as cisgender and you like they, them pronouns to accentuate your gender nonconformity. I know some people who use she, they pronouns, not because they feel gender nonconforming, but they think it's supportive. I don't know whether it is or not, but there's a lot of things people do with pronouns. So thank you for sharing your coming out story.
Thank you for providing context and defining terms I was just throwing out. And that's what I mean, is that I love that I'm living a life where, like, I'm putting it on you to ask these questions. And when I attended you and Lou co-facilitated a workshop at the CSL Reno. Well, it wasn't a CSL Reno. It was a conference, a Centers for Spiritual Living conference in Reno. And at that workshop, you provided some terms. You provided some terms, but I appreciated that one of my prayer partners was in the room. One of my hetero prayer partners was in the room, and she was just shouting questions at y'all from the back of the room. She was like, what does that mean? And I know that she felt empowered enough to yell questions at you from across the room, partly because she's my prayer partner. And I'm like, this is what you got to do. If you don't know things, if you're at a workshop and people are saying things that you don't know and you don't understand, speak up. And she did. And she really helped, the other heteros in the room who may not have known these terms or understood these things or thought in this way, got an opportunity she was the brave one, so to speak. We're in a hero's journey workshop, first of all, like the one who was like using her voice to ask the good questions.
Yeah. And again, if you're not in the community, just calling someone hetero, you're talking about heterosexual as opposed to homosexual. You talk about cisgender, and a lot of times people think that's spelled SIS, but it's CIS. It's a Greek word, means on the same side as, whereas trans means on the other side of. So transcontinental or things like that. So it's interesting, but that becomes such a part of our vocabulary that we just don't even think about the fact that somebody else is listening to us and thinking, what? WTF? What are you saying?
I love that you're bringing it with the etymology. You're like the Greek root.
I know.
I'm here for it. I am here for it.
They're really different things, but that's great. That was part of like what you talked about. Z and I worked on the finances and the spreadsheets together to figure out all the things. So, but what I want to make sure is everybody knows that you want to be at Queerly Beloved Retreat. This is going to be the first. We hope it's the first of many. And I want you there, whether you're Gen Z, millennial, Gen X, or a baby boomer, like some of us might be. It's an open and welcoming space for you to be there and express yourself.
I think that was a beautiful way to end our show. Our viewers don't know that you and I prayed in on a call before we started the episode. So I wondered if you might be willing to give us a quick pray out for this episode.
Oh my goodness. All right. You didn't tell me I was going to get asked to do this.
Put your reverend hat on.
Put my reverend hat on. So, all right. So as I invite everyone just to take a breath, get comfortable in your seat or where you are driving in the car. If you're driving in your car, don't close your eyes. But just acknowledge the privilege of being alive in a human body, the privilege of interacting with other people who may not always see the world as you do, but people who are nonetheless expressions of that one divine God back of all creation. So I just know and affirm this to be true. And I just release these, knowing it's already so. And I end my prayers by saying, and so it is.
And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much, Reverend Christine, for joining us on this queerly beloved takeover of What's Up and Why. Have the best week ever.